Off we go on another day, looking around the world just to make sure. I should have checked this before I hit go, but here we are. All right, couple of interesting stories today. The sun has been a bit of a fascination of mine, and it should be for all. Goodness knows that the ancients worshipped it, and I kind of want to say that they probably understood the greater magnitude of its importance, other than just warming us up every day and sustaining all life on this planet through its endless prana. It's kind of like the only place where there are no shadows is up in that direction. But we've launched a series of satellites up there, and we're kind of making discoveries here and again. But we'll start with that in just a moment. But we'll get to the sun. It's kind of a curious feature of what we got going on. All right, we'll start in Australia, where we're looking at another couple of dry days. It's crazy how the geography of that continent keeps so much of the potential moisture, the rainfall, from getting towards the inland, and no wonder they call it the outback, because it's truly kind of brutal in its ability to sustain and hold life. All right, the numbers on last week's snowstorm says they really got hit in New South Wales at those higher elevations. Remember, it is the middle of the winter down under, and it certainly delivered for those New South Wales resorts. The snow depth at Spencer's Creek in NSW was 90.2 centimeters today, and it's a 56 centimeter improvement. Remember, 100 centimeters is a meter, or about 39 inches. So you could take 40 inches and then divide that. So 56% of 40 inches would give you how much snow arrived in that location. Out of the second tweet, two maximum wave heights also reached upwards of 11 and a half meters. So that's 55 foot. So massive hazardous surf warnings were in place across that area. And there are some of those photographs at the end of some of those jetties, I suppose would be the term, not living near the water, at least haven't in a little bit of while. Those kind of immediate use terms kind of slip away. All right, let's head overseas. And again, and I think this China story, this China rain story, as we've mentioned the last couple of days, is likely to go on and on and on. Because if you've ever been through a flood, you know that when the water finally recedes and you can see the mud and the silt that have deposited on your property, on your floor, whether it's basement, first floor, second floor, that's really when the work begins. At this stage of the flood, we're just trying to get out of the way. We're just trying to stay alive. And these Chinese villagers plea for help as the flooding worsens, as the authorities have, let breaches go. And we saw that in Nebraska with the Army Corps of Engineers, not this previous winter, but the one before, in the winter of 18 to 19, in the spring of 19, where they had to breach the levees. They had to let go. The stress had to come out of the system, and so they chose to flood certain locations, and that was the case over here yet again today. Yeah, 55-foot wave, Karen. That'd whack you good if you were in the wrong place. So they're just pleading for help. And with that kind of a population and with the virus going around, they're just really kind of between a rock and a hard place. The highway before and after the heavy rains in southwest China's province, where they have suffered some of the most deepest flooding, are just kind of unprecedented. As you can see, the roadways before, and there's the road sign, and here we are after. So these typical, what we would term evacuation routes, means of transportation here and there, simply do not exist for these citizens. There's nowhere for them to go because there's no way to move. So it is city after city after city along all of these tributaries, along some of the smaller rivers as well as the large ones, that they're just kind of hemmed on in. And then questions begin to emerge about where the whereabouts of the leadership has been, because we've seen little to no, when we have a disaster, the president gets up there, we address the nation, this is what we're going to do, da 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 da. It's a whole song and dance, but we just haven't seen that from the Chinese leadership thus far. And even within the last 24 hours, the rain continues to fall. You can see the clouds, the heavy rains obscuring some of the buildings that are not that far away. So in meteorology, one of the ways we determine rainfall is either by the rate or how obscured, what's the distance that you can see line of sight. And this one looks like we're at about a mile, so the buildings are extremely obscured, and we use that obscuration metric for aircraft, because the weather observations, were typically done first for farmers and then for aircraft. They used to be called SAs, or surface airway report. And when you're less than a mile visibility, that's going to be some heavy rain, and these guys just got to get out of the way. All right, a bit closer to home, but pretty sky for not so pretty for KSNW. Goddard and Kellogg, we're looking at this is what the event looked like on the radar, but then when you get underneath it, that was quite the shelf cloud or the roll cloud. That's just really, really kind of impressive. And then another view of it. And then we'll end off with the National Weather Service out of Pocatello, Idaho, which is where I spent the last 10 years of my television career, literally up in this neighborhood where this picture was taken. And then there's Comet Neowise. So that kind of gives you an idea just how far off the horizon it is. And this was probably the East Butte out over the Snake River Plain. And then a little close-up shot. And there's so many satellites that are visible out there as the sun slowly sets, and then as you're in these far northern latitudes, that sun stays up there, 100, 200, 3 miles up to illuminate these satellites as they orbit the Earth. So you can be 3 hours after sunset and those satellites still remain visible. So other places, no, let's do this. New phenomena discovered on the sun. A new sun-observing mission led by ESA, or the European Space Agency, and in cooperation with NASA Solar Orbiter, has returned its first images of the sun, revealing a previously unknown omnipresent miniature solar flare, and they've dubbed them campfires. There's so many of them. So the campfires shown in the image below were captured by the extreme ultraviolet imager from Solar Orbiter's first perihelion, or closest approach to the sun, the point at which, there it is, closest to the sun. At this point in time, the spacecraft was only 47 million miles away, which is still outside the orbit of Mercury, which orbits between 20, I think it's upper 20s, like 28, and then about 33, 34 million miles away. So it's only about half the distance between the Earth and the sun. So every time we put a new set of instruments, more sensitive, different frequencies or wavelengths of light, we're going to discover something about this sun. There is so much that we simply don't know. And I have this hunch that it'll be the electrical connection between the sun and Earth that is going to play a massive, massive part in Earth's climate. And I think this is something that we'll likely realize it and recognize at some point in the not-so-distant future. All right, the question we've been querying about is, why have we seen all of these floods in all these different locations around the planet? And one of the reasons has been this massive high-pressure ridge that has been over the northern hemisphere. Africa here, the States here, Atlantic, the big expanse of the Pacific, with China, say, here. And as we go back, and I'm going to run this right back to the beginning, and what we're looking at is a big ridge of high pressure sitting across the North Pole. And so that means that we've got all of these little lows that are pressed farther south. Very cool in Europe, very cool in mid-Siberia, cool over Japan, where they've seen incredible floods there as well as Seoul in South Korea. And then one anchored over the Aleutian Islands and one over mid-Canada. And for the last month, we've been talking about the incredible rains also yielding some very powerful and good growing seasons across Canada. And then another one where it's just freaking frigid for July across Iceland. But as we begin to see over the next 2 weeks, this very anomalous high kind of weaken up, and once it eventually is absorbed or just dissipates and then is kind of drawn off to the south, we see that these deeper lows begin to relax. They retreat northward. So I would anticipate that as we head towards the latter 5 days to 7 days of July, we'll begin to see a portion of these flooding events begin to readjust. Maybe it'll shift to Europe. Maybe it'll shift to the middle part of the United States where it has been so dry. But nonetheless, what happens in these far northern latitudes directly has an impact on weather down below. Yeah, the sun's kind of beautiful, Karen. I know you've kind of been without some climate control. Yeah, it makes the sun almost intolerable where you can't control what goes on inside your place. All right, temperatures across the states, warm through the south. The heat is beginning to return to the northwest where 90s are kind of widespread. Still punctuated by some cooler 80s in Montana, Idaho, and into Wyoming. But the nice thing is they've returned back to the south winds. You can kind of see that with these little arrows that's giving direction winds for Montana, but it's still dry. Humidity is not a big thing. Where we see the green blob, if you will, the Great Lakes states here, Michigan and Wisconsin, that's where we have dew points at or above 60 degrees, and that's kind of where the comfort factor begins to go in. When you're under the green, then you've got fuel, you've got humidity, and that can all then be used to power thunderstorms. All right, why I have the water vapor image up? Yellow is dry, white is the clouds, and then the green indicating thunder showers. Was an incredible complex of storms. This guy erupted across eastern New Mexico last night, worked across North Texas, across Oklahoma, and then as the sun comes up, these kind of nocturnal or nighttime events tend to wind down, only to be replaced by another event. This one likely forming over East Tennessee or West Tennessee, but not quite as potent, but more likely will erupt across eastern Colorado plains. Out and through this area, plenty of high clouds and maybe a few trails from aircraft in there, but I haven't seen too many today that have captured my attention. But this certainly keeps things on the cool side. But what I did want to bring up was some very beneficial rains across the Texas and Oklahoma high plains last night, between an inch and a half to far more widespread 1/2 to 1 inch totals, and that really alleviating some of the drought conditions that have really taken hold in those spots. And national radar images, we've got the southwestern states still under the gun with some typical summer monsoonal storms. It's exactly what you would expect. And then any severe weather we do see is just south of Jamestown, New York, off in that direction, as these showers have erupted once they kind of left the cooler waters of the lake and moved overland. And in fact, I thought I saw a story, and I might be misrecalling, is that some Lake Erie was running about 71 degrees. So it's one of the warmer readings for Lake Erie we have seen in quite some time. There's the showers in the Four Corners area. Also, deep thunderstorms rolling across, say, Alexandria, Louisiana. They've just left New Orleans. They were there just before noon. But what I wanted to talk about, I'm not live.
People responding to you?
Yeah.
They're not seeing you.
Yeah, I'm here. Karen's got me.
Okay.
So, I mean, it looks like there's only one individual, at least on StreamYard. So just had a note from the side, and should be a Metadime. I'm not a Success Secrets. That's interesting. How did that happen? Curious. Okay. All right. So I'm in the Metadime channel, just so you know, Donnie. Okay. And then where we have seen an increase in the showers, or the yellow would indicate where we've kind of dried up. And that is kind of widespread. Northern Colorado, western Nebraska, into portions of southern Nevada. I wonder if I can add a channel. Why isn't there? Yes. Save changes. See what we can do live. Okay. You can adjust that once we go live. That's fascinating. All right. Maybe you've been able to pop in there now. And, well, that's kind of cool. I'm just learning some things. When you have, as we all learn, as the process gets underway, and if you're live and you can adjust your streams on the flow, that's really kind of cool. So, yep. We're there. All right, one in Metadime Digital, and that's kind of where Karen must be. Yeah, okay, that's where I thought we needed to be run into at first, but I don't know why the other one didn't grab hold, Karen. All right, yay, StreamYard. Yeah, that's kind of good. That's really kind of good. We'll see how the quality looks at just a little bit later. So what I'm looking at here are yellow, are places where we've seen the drought intensify over the last 7 days, and the green is where we've been a little, seen some improvement. So the green, where hurricane, how about Tropical Storm Faye, and just barely Tropical Storm at that, made inroads into the dry conditions in the Northeast. The gray is where we do have some moisture deficit. So the green stripes are where we've seen some improvement, and the yellow is where we've seen degradation. All right, back over to what's going on in the national forecast. Some unsettled weather through the Great Lakes states and the upper Midwest. The hashed areas, as we've kind of learned, severe thunderstorms are possible, accompanying with some heavy rain. Otherwise, just more summertime thunderstorms. It can just kind of pop up and fade away, and so forth and so on. And as we move out over from today through tomorrow, So severe weather, probably the upper Midwest yet tomorrow, with some upper level energy just kind of rages on through and then progressive to the Great Lakes. Get my sequence right there, Scott. All right, record highs. And there's the crowd. There's the crowd. Yes, Vicky, Metadime. And what I learned, Vic, is that you can actually adjust which streams are hot during the show. I didn't believe that you could actually disconnect from a channel and then reconnect to other already previously connected sites. So that is really kind of cool. Good to know. Very good to know. Okay, record highs for today. Just one was anticipated, and that's in western North Carolina. I don't know who BRCN is actually. Is the four-letter or the airport identifier. And then the hot weather returns to the high plains of Texas, with Amarillo running at about 102 tomorrow, and Dalhart at 103. So very, very warm in that direction. Saturday, some record heat, and possibly LBF. That's Scottsbluff, Nebraska. Or is that great? Yeah, 103 in the high plains of Nebraska. So that's crazy hot. And then even into Sunday, the heat begins to shift a little bit farther to the east. So Boston at 95, Binghamton, New York at 90 degrees, Dulles Airport at 98. So these are some of the anticipated highs as we move through the week. So as we started off the show, which apparently some of you did not see, and maybe I'll pop back and go through that again, is that we've got our hot high. It kind of comes into place. It remains across the southern U.S. So really, it's status quo. What we have is what we're going to get, with continued showers and thunder showers through the southern and central Rockies. So a little bit of monsoon relief. And then as we really push the model out about days, the high tries to reform out across California and Nevada, which is typically over the last 10 years or so is where it has liked to stay, or even a little bit farther west. And what that does is then it allows for a northerly flow and then up aloft, and then the moisture to come in and cut it underneath it. And that can usually bring us, quite a bit of moisture during the summertime monsoon season. But as far as total precip, let's see if we can roll that out here. Yes, that's rolled to the 16th as we reset the browser, because, if you leave a browser open for too long, you can end up with let's just say reduced system resources. So wet in the east, and then these Mexican mountains, the Sierra Madre, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16 inches worth of rain. And this is completely without any tropical influence outside of just the easterlies and that humidity and just the daytime thunderstorms just turning over. And then some heavier rains as we move into central and northern Canada. Again, that's not so bad. Terrifying. California rescue. Let's see, where are we, Robin? I was in one in California. Terrifying. I was rescuing dogs as they were flushed in by the street. The water was hip deep. Yes, very, very. Flooding is scary. Drought, you can turn on the hose, typically, at least in the States you can. But when you're flooding, there's really the water's going to go to the lowest spot, and it's going to move, and there's really nothing you can do. You can try to dig trenches, you can sandbag, but with the kind of water, the flooding that we were seeing back here, it was just literally stunning. One day's worth of rain, just incredible. The Chinese leadership tends to be missing. And then these cities, as the water just keeps rising, and it doesn't look like we're going to see, a lot of relief from this for at least another 7 days. So instance after instance, and it's not just one river that's flooding. That's the scary thing. It is the whole network of drainage coming off the higher train in China and then off into the East China Sea. It just keeps rising. When you've got water, the soils are saturated. There's just nowhere to go except down. It just goes down. All right, guys. Good to see you there. Glad I found you. Glad you found me. It kind of works both ways. So, and water is, it is a destroyer, and it is a sustainer of life. It's the thing that tears down mountains. It's the thing that sustains the plants that also tear down the elements and the mountains. It is necessary. It's incredibly necessary for life. And when we're doing space exploration, the only thing they're really looking for is water. Because if there's water there, there's life, at least as we know it. And that's always what we're looking for, is we're looking for something that we can relate to as explorers. That's just kind of the basic reason why we go out there looking. All right, guys, thanks for stopping by. And yeah, that won't happen again. That won't happen again. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same bad channel. Catch you then.